Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome once again. We have another student sparring video for you today. Myself and Dwayne starting off here on the feet. As per usual, just starting off pretty slow and then we'll gradually build up as we go along. So training no-gi stuff here today. Dwayne's working on that wrist control, possibly trying to get into some 2-on-1s. He uses that quite a bit. And then I use a collar tie quite a bit as well. I find that quite comfortable as I have a long history training and competing in Muay Thai, so the collar tie works well for me. So again, both standing pretty upright. No one's really doing a lot of level changing, not a lot of dynamic movement at this point because like I said, we're just kind of warming up. Dwayne's getting into that 2-on-1, trying to set up a Russian, but you can see I'm using my head there to stay on the inside. So if I can beat him to that head position, then it takes away a lot of his entries off that 2-on-1. Tried to pop that frame off there and just work his way into this sort of over-under clinch, but again, find ourselves just hand fighting, taking it pretty easy. Me going for a very slow motion shuck for a second there and then went a little bit quicker, got into my own Russian tie. But then that one slipped off, we're back in this same position. Dwayne doing a good job of dragging there, made me put my foot down, but again you could see the head position that I had is what saved me there. I just managed to get my head position on the inside and allowed me to turn and follow as Dwayne was trying to drag to the back, along with him not being able to establish contact with my far side hip, so that allowed me to spin and keep turning with him so that he couldn't get that standing back control and then work on his takedowns from there. Now we're back head to head. Again, remember, when it comes to your defensive wrestling position, head, hands, hips. Head, hands, hips. So we want to try and mimic our opponent's head position, or we want to try and get a dominant head position on the inside. We want to try and beat them in the hand fight, and then we want to try and beat them with our hips, or beat their hips as well. Okay, and there, a little duck under from myself, coming onto Dwayne's back and kind of in sort of a folk style type position for a moment there. We sort of had a little bit of an upper body spiral ride type position, and you can see this bottom side, we've got this wrist control on the bottom hand there, trying to turn and tilt my opponent over, but then giving up and chair sitting, trying to go to the back, but he's done a good job. Starts to threaten a Kimura, and he's got this, what we call a false half guard, or a false half. So it feels like he's got my leg in a half guard, but because I'm on the back side, from here I should be able to essentially just drag and slide my foot back out like I'm kicking through, sort of like a knee slice type of pass, bow and arrow pass, those types of positions. So here, before I actually move, you can see I'm trying to establish a better upper body position, so I don't want to pass if I'm going to put myself at risk for that Kimura grip I think that he had, or maybe try for a back take or something like that. So sort of slowed it down a bit there, but eventually kicking the leg through, sliding, and we've seen the videos recently of the buggy choke getting around, so a fair few people hitting that in tournaments and teaching it online and things like that, and so Dwayne may have seen that recently. It looks like he's trying to kind of hold, maybe set one of those up. Not really sure there, but leg position not quite right, and I was able to keep driving in and opening up space. You can see my weight is on my feet. I'm driving into my opponent here, trying to get as heavy as I can. but keeping that tight knee placement on his hip. So really trying to block the hips or cover the hips, because very hard to hip escape if the person on top is actually holding over your hips. Okay, and that's what I was using there. So trying to stabilize the hips. You can see that very low elbow placement of mine until there, where I felt the weight shift, I felt his defenses shift, and I came up. But a very good job from him there, because then I didn't have control over his hips. He was able to move, hip escape, pull that bottom shin through, frame, and then re-establish his guard. And now here, sort of setting up maybe a rubber guard type position with his left leg. So you can see I'm trying to keep my hands off the floor. And then when I felt that pressure go, standing up, controlling the legs here, just switching directions. So I might have been playing a bit of De La Riva. He turns there, almost exposing the back. Now just getting nice and heavy, just trying to sit on those hips, slow the game down here. Sort of in this leg drag type position, but he's got that knee shield through. So I'm trying to use my free leg to pin and step over, but as I did that, create a little bit too much space. And my opponent was able to again re-guard. So really nice job so far from my opponent here, in terms of being able to keep me in his guard. So I haven't actually really been able to establish too much. And even when I have passed, I'm able to re-guard pretty easily. So from a points perspective here, we had 2 points for a takedown from me off that duck under, got to the back, even though my opponent kind of voluntarily went down to the floor. That would still be a takedown. And then I passed once to get 3 points for the pass. But then since then, a lot of re-guarding, a nice work from him. And then here, once feels the guard opening up, standing back up into position. And now you can see we've got that little bit of a lower stance. So we're a little bit warmer up now, moving around a little bit more blood flowing. So now you might see, you know, a few more sort of shots or level changes, things like that. And again, focusing here on that head position, staying head to head. Try not to let our opponent get that dominant head position. A nice little arm drag attempt there from Dwayne. You see me keeping elbows very tight, try not to give up those underhooks. And this grip on the wrist, nice little wrist grab breaks there from both of us. Again, little drag, but I was posting on the shoulder, fighting for inside hand position here. Dwayne possibly going for a little snap down there. And again, possible little arm drag there, but nothing eventuating. And now my opponent trying to play some mind games on me, trying to bait me here, moving the shoulders, having the low arms, maybe trying to sucker me into grabbing something or putting myself out of position. But I've been around for a little while, so I don't fall for those sorts of gamesmanship things too often. So here we're both staying tight, and now you see a couple little more level changes. We're just warming up a little bit more still. You can see my opponent changing stance. Very nice little drag, gets into a body lock, but again, just unable to control that far hip, so I was able to turn enough that I could re-dig my own underhook and take away that back exposure there. And again, my opponent keeping the arms low, lots of level change, lots of stance changes. And now I kind of head to head, I've got that wrist control. I like that overhand grip that you can see my left hand grabbing my opponent's. It forces my opponent, in order to break that grip, to take their hand out to the side, which gives me a potential entry into the legs. Okay, and I didn't really utilize it there, but Anytime we can have our opponent having their hands coming out to the side of their body, we'll potentially have that opening for our leg attack, singles, double legs, etc. So you can see it again there, that left hand overhand grip, and boom. So there, as he's defended, we shot, got deep onto a low single, my opponent turned, rolled out, we ran out of space on the mat, so we've just eased up there and reset, coming back to position. So in that instance there, that would have been probably an advantage in a tournament. So I took my opponent out, he got to the edge of the mat though before I stabilized that top position. So more than likely that would be an advantage, not actually 2 points. Now if I was able to stabilize and keep that position with my opponent grounded for those 3 seconds and keep him in bounds or on the border, then I would have probably got my 2 points and we would have been reset in the same position back in the center of the mat. But because we went out of bounds and it was unstable, it would have likely only been an advantage there, so no points for that takedown. And now just going over how I use my collar tie to help stop my opponents shooting in. So like I said, I'm quite comfortable using collar ties, and they're a nice way of stopping your opponent getting deep in on shots because you can frame on their collarbone with your forearm. And a little bit more movement there, few of us opening up, lots of level changes. And now here, after a failed takedown, me pulling guard. Now that would have been very close. It'd be good to watch that back again. Oh, slippery floor, we've over-rotated far too much and we're both laughing at my inversion there. My superfluous inversion just spinning around for no point as I got a little bit slippery on the mat. But back to that guard pull. I had wrist control as I sat, but as I sat my opponent broke the wrist control. That would be very borderline whether or not the referee would penalise me for sitting down and pulling guard without grips just then. They may have said it was okay, they may have also said no, sorry, no grips, stand back up and give my opponent a penalty. Okay, and here we are, we've got me playing that seated guard position. Now when my opponent gets too close, you see I flop back onto my back, bit of a safety net. Now playing off my back here, framing as my opponent creates an angle. Again, framing on the shoulder so I can hip escape, and then he changes directions really nice, goes for almost a wrecking ball pass there, stepping through. I thought there could have been a potential leg tack coming there, and there it is. So I managed to put the boot on early on there, stretch my foot out, try and make it nice and strong, and he switches off to double outside Ashi here. Now this position, while it can be great for finishing heel hooks when your opponent's bum is on the ground, if your opponent stands, it can be very hard because they can now start to smash past, potentially put a lot of weight on you, and that's what I'm actually going over here with Dwayne. As I come up, one of my counters that I use against people who stand when I've got that double outside Ashi is I get both of my arms underneath and I turn it into a modified waiter sweep. Because if my arms are underneath my opponent's legs and they can't smash me, then from there we could sit them back on their back, we could re-attack the leg, we could try and come up and get our sweep point. So just going over that there. I start trying to take the back as my opponent goes for a toe hold here. A good thing with toe holds and back attacks is, generally speaking, the toe hold defense kind of encourages us to take the back anyway. So my opponent going for a toe hold there, probably not enough of a threat to warrant an advantage, and my back attack probably not enough to get an advantage for that either. Okay, we reset again. Me in seated guard here, my opponent standing, just sort of watching now. Maybe planning which way he's going to attack, and I've actually seated myself here with my legs quite far apart. Usually I have my feet together when I'm playing seated guard, but I was trying to encourage Dwayne here, whether he realized it or not, trying to almost bait him into stepping in for knee slices and things like that. And so here, little bit of a berimbolo attempt as he goes for the foot, and I'm trying to use my shin here to attack the back, but my knee just popped in a little bit deep. However, I'm pretty safe here because my foot's on his chest, not under his armpit. Now he's starting to attack the heel, so it's getting a little bit better for him. But again, double outside ashi, I managed to get my hips higher than his. That's where I'd want to try and go into a sort of a smashing position. But instead I've opted to go for an inverted heel hook on that near side. Even with this open guard position, now I'm trying to lock over his hips, one, to protect my own feet, but two, just to try to hang on to him and keep some grip, because I don't quite have the position to get a 50-50 here. So a little bit of a hand fight going on here. As I started to rotate towards the back there, Dwayne tries to turn and face, and I was hoping that in that process it would expose that heel angle, which it kind of did for a moment. I switched off to it, but then again he's gone for that hand fight. Now again here, as I started to threaten the back, he turns and defends, so now I'm trying to invert. Now I'm worried about my knee for a moment there. You can see I was trying to get my other leg in, but instead I pounced. So as my opponent pulled away trying to disengage from that leg entanglement, you could see me basically diving after him, and I've ended up on top. So that would be 2 points in a competition setting for a sweep. Even though I didn't really sweep him, he kind of just backed out and went down to the floor, and then I just jumped on top. Still classed as a sweep there. So 2 points for me, and now we're going into a double under position, a stack pass. Trying to keep that pressure on. And there, see this little leg lace? So I tried to get it for a moment, a little leg lace position, and in his defense of not getting leg lace, he's opened up space, and I've slid my leg straight through into a mounted position. So again, 3 points for a pass for me there, and then 4 points for establishing the mount. And now I've got this nice low hips pressuring down, trying to take away the ability for my opponent to bridge, pushing off on the arms. So I'm trying to redirect them in front of my body, trying to sort of ride his hip movement so that I can take some of the power out of it, let it dissipate, and then re-establish control. And my opponent trying to get half guard there, but I managed to move my legs around enough, drop my hip to that side so I could flare my foot out, and then tucking it back in once that half guard threat was gone. I'm trying to grapevine, trying to now cross my feet and drive my hips down. You can see my left arm, I'm trying to work under my opponent's right arm so I can start getting into head arm choke type positions and these things. My opponent letting go of his grip, trying to post under the armpit to push me off, which did a good job at making me move. And now my mount's a little bit higher here. Now I'm working for the same head arm position on my opponent's left arm, so trying to walk my hand up. Okay, I felt like there was nothing really happening there, so giving up on that, and I've come around, making this sort of pillow grip. So this cross face around deep, trying to get under the armpit. A little bit of neck pressure, and I've switched off to a side mount position here now. I'm using that grip to try and feed to the arm, but my opponent, great job. He sensed as I switched from technical mount on one side to an S mount on the other. He's managed to buck and push just as I switched to the arm, push me off, got me back onto my back. However, no sweep. So because I was mounted on my opponent, that's an escape, not a sweep there. So my opponent is actually obliged to escape when I'm in a position of control, so no points for him even though he got on top. Now we've got closed guard being played. And Dwayne here, he's putting a bit of pressure on, potentially trying to set up maybe something like a toesy pass or something. Legs come up and threaten, so he bails out, gets his posture back, and now he's framing on my arms. This is a good move if you want to stall within the guard, so if you just want to get your breath back, you can sit, you can put your hands up under your opponent's biceps or in their armpits and kind of kill what their arms are capable of doing. But it can also be a really good tactic if you want to stand and work on your passes as well. So here, I'm trying to break down my opponent's posture. I'm trying to dig my arm underneath so I can overhook it. My opponent stands, I'm trying to sit his butt down on the ground from this position here so I can kind of try to bridge up over the top of it and turn it into a sweep. Then I've switched off to a quick Kayatera footlock there. Didn't quite get it, but my opponent tried to counter with a footlock of his own, and I've managed to get up on top. So again, 2 points for my sweep. He's found himself in double outside ashi, with me sprawling on top, and that was the first sort of 20 odd minutes or half an hour of the roll done there. So really nice round, no submissions, couple of little leg attacks from both of us, and some positional exchanges back and forth. And now we've started our second round here, coming out and my opponent getting nice and low. Now keep in mind, when you're competing, if your knees are on the floor like that, so there my opponent's knees on the ground, you can't do takedowns off your knees in IBJJF tournaments. If you are grounded on your knees, it doesn't count as a takedown, so just be aware of that. My opponent pulling half guard here, but I've managed to turn his hips, and now I'm sitting heavy. He's got the underhook, but because I'm on my side, it's not really an issue. And now I've waited for my opponent to try and move, and then bam, back step. Again, nice little hip switch there as my opponent tried to re-guard, and I've managed to pass now into side control. And I've got this arm over the head, almost like a guillotine type of grip. I love this setup for the Darce choke. So here, my opponent's inside arm, the one that you can see in the air over my hip here, that's the one that I'm going to try and I get across his neck. So I get my guillotine grip from side control. You can see my opponent's worried about that north-south choke or the guillotine, so he actually brings his arm into position for me. He's trying to push off. And what I want to do is move towards a north-south position. Here we go, there. So wrap the neck up, moving towards north-south and all the way around to the other side. Sink the hands through, and a very nice quick Darce choke. One of my all-time favorite submissions. That one there, good for people with long arms like myself. Okay, here we go. So my opponent backstepped. I managed to get my elevator hook in behind him as he stepped and sat for that knee bar. I read it well. I think Ryan Hall refers to that as the Jedi mind trick. I can't remember, someone correct me if I'm wrong there in the comments down below, but managed to turn that into a sweep and get on top. Again, you can see I'm very low in my side control, and this is because oftentimes I really focus on framing and boxing in the hip so that we take away our opponent's ability to hip escape. He goes for that Kimura, but no guard. Classic armbar off that side control Kimura, step around through north-south and get that far side armbar. Kazushi Sakuraba, for anyone who knows, the MMA legend and pioneer, used to hunt lots of armbars, and I recall quite a few fights of his, maybe in his UFC career and also in his Pride fighting days, hitting that exact setup. Opponent sort of spinning out there. I think fatigue setting in at this point. We've been rolling for close to 45 minutes or so at this point, I believe. Almost past as we were belly down, so an advantage here. So for right now, no more guard. Okay, so if I get on top here, it won't be worth any points because my opponent Dwayne has managed to get me to turtle position. So once that advantages have been given, it's it's no longer a guard position, which means I can no longer sweep, and it also means he can no longer pass. So if he gets me flat to my back here in side control, no points for him at all. Now he's attacking the neck a little bit here. I sort of felt like there could have been a Peruvian necktie coming because he's quite high up and stepping over. So worried here about triangle chokes from the front position or for Peruvian necktie. So I'm keeping my elbows very, very low. You can see my elbows are super tight and defending the neck. Quick intermission there with somebody coming into the gym. So we'll start in the same position here. So again, in this front turtle position here, I'm just keeping heavy, keeping my hand fight, staying composed, watching that my opponent doesn't step over. Step over in the sense of sitting up, coming forward for a Peruvian necktie. So just staying here, staying strong, keeping composed. My opponent again trying to fish there, maybe for that triangle position. And that was a really nice little example. You could see my opponent started to cut the corner, try to go to the back, so I sat for the half guard. As soon as he came back to that front turtle position, I've got straight back to turtle. So I would have lost that if I had hung in there, and then I kind of got onto a single leg, and I've used that to get to my half guard. But a little bit shallow, my opponent doing a good job, but very nice little bump up to the butt with the knee, and then I've climbed up the leg trying to take the back standing. But my opponent, rather than exposing his back, has dropped down, giving me that side control position. So 2 points for a sweep there because I managed to get my half guard back from turtle. My opponent started to cut through and I bumped up, came up onto a single leg, ran him down, getting straight into side control. So no passing points there, so 2 points for the takedown, or the sweep I should say. But no points here, even though I've landed up in side control, because I happened just to take him down straight into that position. Again here, trying to frame on the hips, trying to stay very tight around those hips to take away that power. Trying to slow down the hip escapes. Again, you can see my opponent throwing the arm over. Again, he may have had that buggy choke in his mind, but nothing happening there. Leg placement not quite right, and we find ourselves still in this side control position. Framing on my neck here, so you can see I'm turning, facing his legs to take away some of the strength of that frame on my throat. But he does a good job. He's starting to re-guard. I start to change and cut the corner, taking the different side. But again, he recovers. Very slippery now, so you can see we're slipping around a little bit. But I've managed to pass back around to the other side, so potentially another 3 points for a guard pass there, as my opponent was escaping side control. And then he re-guarded, and then I managed to pass again. Now I'm using my leg here underneath his hamstring and knee. You can see I'm keeping his foot up in the air. I'm just trying to take away his ability to get that bottom knee in so he can create space. You can see again, I'm trying to block on his hips, try not to let him move. Keeping my legs super tight. And then as soon as I saw that leg come down, stepping straight over into mount. Quick grapevine there, just to take away that initial threat. And here we are again, my opponent hanging on. You can see I'm just trying to walk, break that grip. My opponent Dwayne here looking rather fatigued, arms out on the floor. might be trying to lull me into something here. We can't really see what's happening. I've got my foot stretched, trying to take away his bridge to that side, because you can see that my weight is off to my right. So I had that grapevine on the left there, trying to take away his bridge. We sit through here to sort of a modified mount position once again. Now the arm is trapped, so I've stepped over his arm here. And so now look for a mounted triangle. There we go. So swinging around. Head down allows me to get my hips up so I can lock the triangle behind the knee. Really nice angle there, 90 degrees, switching off and getting the tap.